CEO returned his ring in public. Then the single dad revealed he owned her company. What could happen when a CEO returned a ring in public? Why would a single dad reveal such a surprising truth? Hello, everyone. We hope you are having a wonderful day filled with happiness and positive energy. Please give us about 5 seconds to share a small kindness with us by subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications. Thank you for being here and supporting our channel through every story we share. Before we begin, tell us where in the world you are watching from and what time is right now. We are grateful to have you with us as we discover this meaningful journey of kindness and understanding. Now, let us begin the story today together. You should never judge a person by what they carry on the outside, because you may never know what they quietly built on the inside. The room was filled with executives, investors, and important guests when Ethan Walker walked in wearing a simple jacket and holding an old family ring. Nobody noticed the years of responsibility behind his calm expression. Nobody knew the story connected to that ring. Victoria Reynolds, the powerful CEO of the company, looked at him and made a decision based only on what she saw. "I think this belongs back where it came from," she said as she returned the ring in front of everyone. Ethan did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He simply accepted the moment with quiet dignity. His calm reaction confused the people watching because most expected anger. But Ethan had learned something important in life. The truth does not need to be announced loudly to be real. For years, he had lived far away from attention, choosing a peaceful life with his son Noah instead of the spotlight that once surrounded him. While others chased titles and recognition, Ethan focused on the things that mattered most: family, trust, and keeping promises. Victoria knew him only as a quiet single dad who seemed out of place among powerful business leaders. She did not know that the man standing in front of her had a connection to the company deeper than anyone in the room could imagine. She did not know that the ring she returned was not just an old piece of jewelry. It represented a history she had never discovered. Ethan Walker had once built something extraordinary, but he walked away from the attention that came with it. He believed that a person's value was not measured by the size of their bank account or the power of their position. It was measured by the lives they touched and the choices they made when nobody was watching. Years earlier, Ethan had made a decision that changed the direction of his life. After becoming a father, he realized that success meant more than business achievements. He wanted to be present for Noah's childhood. He wanted to teach his son that kindness mattered more than recognition. So he stepped away from the world that knew his name and created a quieter life. Meanwhile, Victoria Reynolds had built her reputation on confidence and control. She was respected throughout the business world because she always appeared certain. She believed every situation could be understood through facts, numbers, and results. But standing across from Ethan, she faced something she could not measure: a person's character. The moment seemed small to everyone else, but it would become the beginning of a lesson Victoria would never forget. Because the quiet single dad she dismissed in front of everyone was not the person she thought he was. And soon, the entire company would discover that the man they overlooked had been connected to their future all along. The next morning, Ethan Walker returned to the quiet routine he had built for himself. He prepared breakfast, helped Noah get ready for school, and enjoyed the simple moments that had become more valuable to him than any business achievement. To the outside world, he was just a single father living an ordinary life. But Ethan knew that a peaceful life could hold more meaning than a public reputation. Meanwhile, Victoria Reynolds could not stop thinking about the man from the company event. Something about Ethan's reaction stayed in her mind. Most people would have been embarrassed or angry after being treated that way in front of important guests. But Ethan remained calm. He carried himself with a confidence that did not come from status. It came from knowing who he was. "Who is Ethan Walker?" Victoria asked her assistant later that day. "I want a complete background report." Her assistant looked surprised. "Is there a reason?" Victoria paused before answering. "I think there is something I do not understand." The search began quietly. At first, the information seemed simple. Ethan Walker, former entrepreneur, father, community volunteer, no major public appearances, no desire for attention. But as the report continued, small details began to appear. Names, documents, old company records, connections that seemed impossible to ignore. Victoria discovered that Ethan was not just someone with a forgotten past. He was someone connected to the foundation of the company itself. Years earlier, before Victoria became CEO, Ethan had played a major role in building the organization that she now led. He had created systems, developed strategies, and helped establish the values that shaped the company's early success. But instead of holding on to power, Ethan stepped away. He transferred leadership responsibilities and chose a different path. Victoria stared at the information on her screen. Why would someone walk away from something they built, she wondered. The answer was not in the documents. It was in the stories people told about Ethan. Former employees described him as someone who always listened before making decisions. Someone who remembered names, helped people grow, and never used his position to make others feel small. Ethan had left behind something many powerful people spent their entire lives searching for: respect. Back at home, Noah noticed his father looking thoughtful. "Dad, are you worried about something?" he asked. Ethan smiled. "No, I'm just thinking about how quickly people can misunderstand each other." Noah looked curious. "Can they fix it?" Ethan looked at his son and smiled. "Most things can be fixed when people are willing to understand." Those words reflected the way Ethan lived. He did not hold anger toward Victoria. He did not want revenge. He simply believed that everyone had moments where they saw only a small part of someone's story. That evening, Victoria visited the company archives. She wanted to understand why Ethan disappeared from the business world. Inside old records, she found a document that made her stop. It showed that Ethan was not just a former leader. He was still connected to the company in a way she never expected. The quiet single dad she had dismissed in front of everyone had been closer to the heart of the company than anyone realized. And as Victoria continued searching, she was about to uncover the truth behind why Ethan chose a simple life after building something so valuable. The discovery inside the company archives changed the way Victoria Reynolds looked at everything around her. For years, she believed she understood the history of the organization she led. She knew the major decisions, the important names, and the milestones that shaped the company. But now she realized there was a part of that history she had never truly understood. A name appeared repeatedly in old records. Ethan Walker, not as someone seeking attention, not as someone demanding recognition, but as someone who quietly built the foundation that allowed others to succeed. Victoria continued reading through the documents late into the evening. She found reports showing that Ethan had once been responsible for some of the company's most important early developments. He had created opportunities for employees, supported new ideas, and helped build a culture that people respected. But instead of staying at the center of everything, he stepped away. Why would anyone leave something like this behind? Victoria asked herself. The answer became clearer when she discovered old interviews with employees who had worked with Ethan years earlier. They did not describe him as a powerful businessman. They described him as a person who cared. One former employee wrote, "Ethan never asked people what they could do for him. He always asked what he could do to help them succeed." Those words stayed with Victoria. She remembered the way she treated him at the event. She remembered looking at his simple clothes and assuming she knew his value. Now she understood that she had measured a person by the wrong things. Meanwhile, Ethan continued his normal life. He picked Noah up from school, helped him with homework, and spent the evening preparing dinner. He did not know that Victoria was discovering the truth about his past. He did not know that the company he once built was beginning to see his contribution in a new way. Ethan had never hidden his identity because he was afraid of losing power. He hid it because he wanted people to make decisions based on character, not reputation. Years earlier, when he stepped away from leadership, he made a choice. He wanted to know if the company could continue following the values it was created with. He wanted leaders to care about people, not just results. Victoria finally found a private letter Ethan had written when he transferred leadership responsibilities. The letter was not about money or ownership. It was about responsibility. A company is not a building, a product, or a name, Ethan had written. A company is the people who believe in something bigger than themselves. Victoria read the words several times. She realized the man she had underestimated was the same person who had given her the opportunity to lead. He had trusted her without needing praise. He had allowed her to succeed without revealing that he was watching from a distance. For the first time, Victoria felt something stronger than embarrassment. She felt gratitude. She understood that Ethan had not returned to the company to prove he was important. He had returned because he believed people deserved another chance to understand what truly mattered. The next morning, Victoria made a decision. She would meet Ethan again, not as a CEO speaking to someone she misunderstood, but as a person ready to acknowledge the truth. Because sometimes the greatest lessons come from the people we almost fail to see. Victoria Reynolds arrived at Ethan Walker's home the following afternoon with a feeling she had never expected to carry into a conversation. She was not there as the CEO of a successful company. She was not there as the person who had the authority to make decisions. She was there as someone who needed to admit she had been wrong. Ethan opened the door and looked surprised to see her standing there. "I did not expect a visit from you," he said calmly. Victoria took a moment before speaking. "I know. I came because there are things I need to say." Ethan invited her inside, and they sat in the same simple living room where Ethan and Noah shared their everyday moments. Victoria looked around and noticed something she had missed before. The home was not filled with expensive items or symbols of success. It was filled with memories, family pictures, school projects, small reminders of a life built with care. "I found the records," Victoria said. Ethan remained quiet. "I know what you did for the company. I know what you built." Ethan looked down and smiled slightly. "The company was never about what I built alone." Victoria shook her head. "That is exactly what makes you different." She explained that she spent years believing leadership meant having the most control and making the strongest decisions. But Ethan showed her another way. "Why did you never tell me who you were?" she asked. Ethan looked at her thoughtfully. "Would you have listened differently if you knew?" Victoria paused. She knew the answer. She probably would have. She would have respected his words because of his title, not because of their meaning. Ethan continued, "I want to know if people would value the ideas without knowing where they came from." Victoria looked away, realizing the lesson was not easy to accept. She had judged him before she understood him. She had seen a quiet single dad and assumed he had nothing to offer. She never considered that someone could have great influence and still choose a simple life. "I owe you an apology," Victoria said. "Not just for the ring, for the way I saw you." Ethan nodded gently. Everyone has moments when they see only a small part of someone's story. Those words stayed with Victoria. She expected disappointment. She expected anger. Instead, Ethan offered understanding. That was what surprised her most. He had every reason to remind her of her mistake, but he chose not to. Later, Noah entered the room carrying a school project. He looked at Victoria and smiled politely. "Are you my dad's friend?" he asked. Victoria smiled back. "I hope I can be." After Noah walked away, Victoria looked at Ethan. "You are teaching him something important." Ethan smiled. "I am trying." "What is that?" she asked. Ethan answered simply, "That people are more than what others see at first." The conversation changed something inside Victoria. She realized Ethan's greatest strength was not the company he owned or the success he had achieved. It was the way he treated people when he had nothing to prove. Before leaving, Victoria looked at Ethan one more time. "I want to make things right." Ethan nodded. "Then start by making sure people feel respected." The next day, Victoria returned to the company with a different mindset. She no longer wanted to lead by being the person everyone feared. She wanted to become the kind of leader people trusted. And the man she once underestimated had shown her the first step toward becoming someone better. The following weeks brought a quiet transformation inside Bennett Enterprises. It was not a change that appeared in headlines or attracted public attention. It happened through small decisions, honest conversations, and a different way of seeing people. Victoria Reynolds began visiting different departments of the company, not to inspect numbers or judge performance, but to listen. She asked employees what they needed, what challenges they faced, and what ideas they had been afraid to share. For many employees, it was the first time a CEO had taken the time to hear their voices. One afternoon, Victoria walked through the office and noticed a young employee sitting alone with a complicated project. In the past, she might have simply asked for faster results. Instead, she stopped and asked, "What support would help you succeed?" The employee looked surprised but then smiled. It was a small moment, but it represented a completely different kind of leadership. Victoria understood that Ethan's lesson was not about business strategy alone. It was about people. Meanwhile, Ethan continued focusing on his life outside the company. He spent mornings preparing Noah for school, attended community events, and enjoyed the simple routines he once believed. He had lost forever. He did not return to the company to take control. He returned only when people needed guidance. Even then, he stayed in the background. Some employees eventually learned the truth about Ethan's connection to the company. Their reactions were not what Ethan expected. Many were amazed that someone with so much influence had chosen to live such a humble life. "Why did you hide all of this?" one employee asked him during a small community meeting. Ethan smiled. "Because I wanted people to respect the work, not the person behind it." Those words spread quietly throughout the company. They became a reminder that leadership was not about being the most visible person in the room. It was about making sure others had the opportunity to succeed. Victoria often thought about that lesson. Before meeting Ethan, she believed respect came from achievement. She believed people earned attention by reaching the highest positions. But Ethan showed her that some of the most respected people are those who never ask to be noticed. One evening, Victoria invited Ethan to walk through the company headquarters after everyone had left. The building was quiet, with only the soft sounds of the city outside the windows. "Do you ever regret leaving this place?" Victoria asked. Ethan looked around the office spaces, the meeting rooms, and the people's stories represented throughout the building. "No," he answered, "because leaving gave me something I could not find here." Victoria looked at him. "What was that?" Ethan smiled. "Time. Time with my son. Time to understand what really matters." Victoria nodded slowly. She realized that Ethan had not abandoned success. He had simply chosen a different definition of it. For years, she chased achievements because she thought they would create happiness. Ethan had already discovered something deeper. Happiness came from knowing who you were and what you valued. Before they left the building, Victoria looked at the company logo displayed in the lobby. It represented years of growth, hard work, and ambition. But now she saw something different. She saw the values behind it. She saw the people behind it. And she finally understood why Ethan had never needed to announce his importance. The strongest foundations are often built quietly, long before anyone notices them. The quiet changes inside Bennett Enterprises continued to grow, but the most important transformation was happening within the people themselves. Employees who once believed success was only about competition began to understand the value of cooperation. Leaders who once focused only on results began to see the importance of relationships. And at the center of this shift was a lesson Ethan Walker had carried for years. True leadership was not about standing above others. It was about standing beside them. One morning, Victoria Reynolds invited Ethan to a private meeting at the company headquarters. She wanted his opinion on a new direction for the organization. The old Victoria would have made the decision alone and expected everyone to follow. The new Victoria wanted to listen first. "I used to think being a strong leader meant having all the answers," she said. Ethan looked at her and smiled. A strong leader knows when to ask the right questions. Those words stayed with her. Victoria realized that confidence did not mean refusing help. Sometimes the greatest strength came from accepting wisdom from others. During the meeting, they discussed ways to improve the company culture. Ethan shared ideas based on his years of experience, but he never presented them as demands. He simply offered another perspective. Victoria noticed something important. Even though Ethan had the authority to make any decision he wanted, he always gave people room to grow. He trusted others because he believed trust created responsibility. Later that week, Victoria organized a company gathering where employees from every department were invited to share their experiences. It was different from the traditional meetings she used to lead. There were no long speeches about achievements. There were no moments designed to impress investors. Instead, people shared stories about teamwork, challenges, and the moments when someone helped them continue moving forward. Ethan attended quietly with Noah. He stood near the back of the room, watching people connect. Noah looked around and asked, "Dad, are these the people you helped?" Ethan smiled. "Maybe, but they're also the people helping each other now." Noah nodded. Even though he was young, he understood something important about his father. Ethan never wanted to be remembered as the person who saved everyone. He wanted people to discover their own ability to make a difference. After the event, Victoria walked with Ethan outside the building. The evening air was calm, and the city lights reflected across the windows. "I spent so much time trying to prove I was capable," Victoria admitted. "I thought people would respect me if I showed them I was always right." Ethan listened carefully. "And what do you think now?" he asked. Victoria smiled softly. "I think respect comes when people know you care about them." Ethan nodded. That answer showed how much she had changed. She was no longer the CEO who judged people by appearances. She had become a leader who searched for the stories behind every person. Before leaving, Victoria noticed the old company records displayed in the lobby. The history of Bennett Enterprises was filled with names of people who contributed to its success. She realized that every achievement had a human story behind it. And one of the most important stories belonged to a man who never asked anyone to remember his name. Ethan Walker had built more than a company. He had built a reminder that humility could be powerful, kindness could create change, and a person's greatest legacy was not what they owned, but what they gave to others. The following months brought a new rhythm to Bennett Enterprises. The company was still focused on growth and success, but the meaning behind those words had changed. Under Victoria Reynolds' leadership, people began to notice something different. Meetings became more open. Employees felt comfortable sharing ideas. Managers started listening before making decisions. It was not a sudden transformation created by one announcement. It was the result of countless small choices made with patience and respect. Ethan Walker watched these changes quietly from a distance. He was proud, but he never wanted credit. To him, seeing people believe in themselves was more rewarding than seeing his name recognized. One afternoon, Victoria visited Ethan at the community center where he volunteered. She found him helping a group of young people prepare for a career program. There were no cameras, no important guests, and no signs of his connection to a major company. He was simply there because he believed people deserved opportunities. Victoria stood nearby and watched for a moment. She saw the same kindness that she had missed when she first met him. "You still do this even after everything changed?" she asked. Ethan looked up and smiled. "What changed?" Victoria smiled back. "Now everyone knows who you are." Ethan shook his head gently. "That does not change why I help." Those words reminded Victoria of the biggest lesson Ethan had taught her. A person's actions should not depend on whether someone is watching. Real character appears in the moments when recognition is impossible. Later that day, Victoria asked Ethan about his decision to step away from the spotlight years earlier. She wanted to understand how someone could build something so valuable and then choose a quieter path. Ethan thought carefully before answering. When people achieve something big, they sometimes start protecting the achievement more than the purpose behind it. "I wanted to remember the purpose." Victoria listened carefully. She realized that Ethan had not walked away because he lacked ambition. He walked away because he understood what mattered most. That evening, Ethan returned home and spent time with Noah. They sat together looking through old family photos. Noah found a picture of Ethan when he was younger and asked, "Were you always this calm?" Ethan laughed softly. "Not always." "Then what changed?" Noah asked. Ethan looked at his son and smiled. "Life teaches you what is worth holding on to." Those simple words represented Ethan's journey. He had experienced success, responsibility, and change, but the most valuable thing he gained was understanding. Meanwhile, Victoria continued becoming the kind of leader she once thought was impossible. She began mentoring younger employees and encouraging them to lead with empathy. She often shared a lesson she learned from someone who never asked to be noticed. The people who make the biggest difference are not always the people standing in the spotlight, she would say. Sometimes they are the ones quietly helping others shine. The company grew stronger, not because of one person's power, but because many people finally understood their own value. And at the center of that change was Ethan Walker, the single dad who never needed to prove his importance. His greatest achievement was not owning a company. It was showing others that kindness, humility, and respect could build something far greater than success alone. As time passed, the story of Bennett Enterprises became known for something different than most successful companies. People no longer talked only about growth, profits, or achievements. They talked about the values that guided every decision. They talked about respect, trust, and the belief that every person had something meaningful to contribute. Victoria Reynolds had changed the way she led, but she always remembered where that change began. It began with a man who never tried to impress anyone. One morning, Victoria invited Ethan Walker to attend a special company event. It was not a business presentation or an investor meeting. It was a celebration of the people who helped shape the organization. Employees from different departments gathered together, sharing stories about moments when someone had supported them during difficult times. Ethan stood quietly among them, listening more than speaking. Victoria watched him and smiled because she understood something now. Ethan had never wanted recognition. He wanted people to recognize each other. During the event, Victoria stepped onto the stage. She looked across the room and saw hundreds of people who represented the future of the company. A great organization is not built by one person, she said. It is built by every person who chooses to care. She paused before continuing. Sometimes the people who influence us the most are not the ones with the loudest voices. Sometimes they're the people who quietly remind us what matters. Everyone in the room understood who she was talking about. Ethan looked down with a small smile. He did not feel embarrassed by the attention, but he also did not seek it. He accepted it with the same humility he had shown from the beginning. After the event, several employees approached Ethan. They wanted to thank him for the example he had set. One employee asked, "How did you stay so humble after building something so successful?" Ethan thought for a moment before answering. Because success is temporary. The way you treat people is what remains. Those words became another lesson that stayed with everyone who heard them. Later that evening, Ethan and Noah walked through the city together. They stopped near a park where families were spending time together. Noah looked at his father and asked, "Are you happy with everything that happened?" Ethan smiled. "Yes, even when people did not know who you were." Noah asked. Ethan nodded. "Especially then." Noah looked confused. Ethan continued, "When people appreciate you after learning your name, that feels good. But when someone respects you before knowing anything about you, that means something even more." Noah remembered those words because they reflected who his father truly was. Meanwhile, Victoria kept the old company records in her office, not as a reminder of ownership, but as a reminder of perspective. She kept one simple note beside them: always look deeper than what you see. It was a message she wanted to remember every day. Years earlier, she had looked at Ethan and seen only what was on the surface. Now she understood the truth. A person's greatest value is often hidden behind ordinary appearances. The quiet person in the room may carry wisdom, kindness, and experiences that cannot be measured. Ethan Walker never needed the world to know what he owned. He already knew what mattered most. He owned his choices, his values, and the love of the people closest to him. And that was a kind of wealth no company could ever create. Years later, the legacy of Bennett Enterprises was no longer measured only by the size of the company or the success of its achievements. It was measured by the people who felt valued, the employees who discovered their confidence, and the leaders who learned that kindness could create lasting change. At the center of that legacy was Ethan Walker, a single father who never expected recognition for the choices he made. He simply believed that doing the right thing mattered, even when nobody was watching. Ethan continued living a peaceful life with Noah. Their days were still filled with simple routines, family conversations, and moments that reminded Ethan why he had chosen a different path. He had once believed success meant building something that everyone could see. But over time, he learned that the most meaningful things were often invisible. They were found in trust, connection, and the lives touched along the way. Victoria Reynolds also continued to grow as a leader. She became known not only for her business decisions, but for the way she treated people. New employees often heard the story of how she learned one of the greatest lessons of her career from someone she almost overlooked. She never shared the story to embarrass herself. She shared it because she wanted others to understand the importance of seeing beyond appearances. During one company anniversary, Victoria invited Ethan to speak to the employees. He stood on the stage and looked at the people gathered before him. He was not wearing anything that showed his position or history. He looked exactly like the man everyone had first seen years earlier. A quiet father, a humble person, someone who did not need attention to know his own worth. Many people spend their lives trying to prove they matter, Ethan said. But the truth is, your value is not created by titles, possessions, or recognition. Your value comes from the way you treat others and the choices you make every day. The room became silent as everyone listened. Ethan continued, "Success is not about standing above people. It is about helping people stand stronger." Victoria watched from the audience and smiled. She knew those words represented everything she had learned. After the speech, she thanked Ethan for everything he had done. "You changed the way I see leadership," she said. Ethan smiled. "You were always capable. You just needed a different way to look at things." Years passed, but the lesson remained. The company continued growing. Noah grew into a thoughtful young man, and Ethan continued helping others without expecting anything in return. The ring that once created a misunderstanding became a symbol of something much deeper. It represented a reminder that first impressions are not always the truth. It represented forgiveness, understanding, and the power of second chances. The world often celebrates the people who are easy to notice, but some of the most important people are the ones who quietly create positive change around them. Ethan Walker never needed everyone to know his name. He never needed applause or admiration. He already had what mattered most: a family that loved him, a life he was proud of, and the knowledge that his kindness had made a difference. And in the end, that was the greatest legacy anyone could leave behind.